We can create instances of assembly components, arranging them in linear or circular patterns. Instances are different than copies. Copies imply that changes to the original will have no effect on the copies. With instances, a change to the original will affect all of the instances. The patterns available are linear, circular, or mirrored. Linear creates a pattern along one or two linear directions. Circular creates a pattern about an axis. Mirror creates a pattern across a plane. Note that mirror creates opposite-hand versions of the components, geometry that is reversed across the mirror plane. They are not true instances of the source. I'll open a new component and insert an existing component, our floor. The sub-assembly component is placed at the origin, but it is not oriented the way we'd like it. We'll have to free it up and add some mates. To do this, I'll right-click the component in the design library and click Float Component. I can now drag the component freely. But the component should not be movable. Fixing it was one way to keep it in place. Adding mates is another. I'll select the bottom face of the component by right-clicking roughly over the location of the face and clicking Select Other. After picking the face I want from the list, I'll press the Control key and click the XY plane. Load All Components appears. This happens when we attempt to mate to a subassembly component. I'll click Load All Components, and the subassembly is resolved and ready to mate. I'll click Coincident, Flip Orientation, and OK. I'll select the component in the Design Manager and use the robot axes to rotate it around. I'll add a couple more coincident mates between planes of the component and planes of the assembly. Note how the mate folder changes from planar to prismatic to rigid as the mates are added. Rigid is the equivalent of fixed for motion. The component cannot move. Let's create a linear pattern of subassembly components using a direction normal to the YZ plane. Click Linear Component Pattern and the YZ plane. The direction can also be defined by a linear edge or an axis. For the spacing, I'll type in 1.1 m to set the distance in meters, and it will register as 1100 millimeters in the dialog. For the number of instances, I'll use 4. That number includes the original or source for the 4 total shown in the preview. Note that the purple denotes the source and yellow the instances. The pattern can also be spread in a second direction, defined using the same type of geometry, but I'll just click OK. The 3 instances are added to the tree, and the Assembly Pattern 1 feature is added after the mates. If I try dragging the first instance or second component, it moves. The pattern places the components but does not fix them. I'll click Undo, and to prevent this, I'll click each instance and Fix Component from the context menu. I'd like another row of instances facing these 1.5 meters away. To do this, we'll use a mirror. I'll need a plane halfway between the rows to do this. I'll click the ZX plane and the plane tool from the Features action bar. Setting the distance to 1.5 m/2, xDesign will do the math and come up with 750 millimeters as the plane position. Note that the handles on the corners of the plane can be used to size the graphics, although it is always infinite. Rename the plane Mirror Plane. Next, I'll click Mirror from the Assembly action bar and select the new plane, Mirror Plane. I'll also select all the existing components from the work area or the tree. Clicking Create Symmetry Mate to keep them in place, and click OK. The The subassemblies seem to be interfering with one another, so let's change the distance between the rows. I'll double-click the mirror plane feature and set the offset to 2m or 2 meters. Click OK. Clicking Solve will show the changes. We'll need an axis to create the last pattern, a circular component pattern. I'll click Axis from the Feature action bar and select the mirror plane and the YZ plane. I'll also drag the handles to make the axis longer and easier to select. Click OK. Now that we have everything we need, I'll click Circular Component Pattern and the new axis, axis.1, as the axis for direction. For the item to pattern, I'll select a face of the source subassembly in the work area. The spacing will be 45 degrees with 4 instances. The arrows can be used to reverse the direction of the pattern, and OK will complete the patterning.